Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Luke James, not the singer. If you want your music reviewed, you know you can hit up Luke at redmattersite.com. That's SITE. And here we go with another episode of the podcast where I'm actually going to be answering some of the questions you guys have sent in. Now, I'm not sure where you're listening to this. As I said on the last episode, I am moving away from SoundCloud just because the price is too crazy for the amount of work I want to put out. And you can still find me on iTunes, Spotify, and also the YouTube channel. So you know how to find me. Just look up Luke James Reviews or the Luke James Podcast, and you'll find exactly what it is you're looking for. But we're going to jump right into these questions because I do have quite a few of them, and we'll see how long this goes on. I'm not sure how long this episode is going to be. I'm going to guesstimate around 20 minutes or so. But the first question comes to us from CT Reviews, and he asks me about my favorite non-hip-hop artists. I actually listen to a lot of non-hip-hop in my spare time, especially when my kids are around, because I can't always be listening to some gangsta shit or crazy sexual bars when they're running around. I don't want them going to preschool, talk about my neck, my back, or some type of wild shit. And you know what? I have actually answered this question in other Q&As before. So I'm just going to throw out 5 answers here, and they're probably different from the other times I answered because there is a lot of different stuff that I listen to. But off top, I'm going to throw out Toro y Moi. His last album is pretty good, and just his discography overall is very eclectic. He's done some acoustic stuff, some electronic stuff, just a very versatile artist who's very interesting to me. So I like Toro. We got Benny Sings. He's an artist who I just found out about recently. He did this Passion Fruit remix last year, I think it was, and it was really smooth and catchy. Then he just dropped another album that's very nice. Very same type of feel, just that blue-eyed soul. We got Suchmos. Man, I forget how I even came into finding Suchmos. I think I was listening to a playlist of Persona music or something like that, and they popped over. Just a very interesting band from out east. I forget where they're from. I forget if they're from Japan or Korea. I apologize. I'm not just going to guess because I don't want to fuck it up. But yeah, they're not even singing in English most of the time. But I do like just the overall sound of it. They got a really cool sound, so you could check them out. We got Thievery Corporation. This is a group that just does a wide variety of sounds. You're going to hear every fucking instrument under the sun on some of their tracks, as well as different languages and stuff. They just have this very worldly sound. The Cosmic Game in particular is one of my favorite albums from them. And of course, I got to shout out Mayor Hawthorne, who just has a great discography. Even the stuff that he did with Jake One as Tuxedo is really dope. So those are some of my answers. Check them out if you're not familiar. Let me know what you think, or if you do like these artists. I'm curious to know what some of your guys' favorite projects or songs from them might be. Now, up next, we have a question from NightKid27, and he asked me to list my top 10 Nintendo Switch games so far. And I'm not even sure if I have 10 at this point because I just got my Switch a couple of months ago and I haven't really played 10 games yet. But off top, I got to go with Smash Bros. And Mario Kart because these are just family games. I love playing these with my 4-year-old daughter and my wife. As some of you may have seen on Twitter recently, I did get that Joker DLC, and my daughter has just been losing her mind, man. She loves Persona 5. I just think it's the cutest thing. When I tell her bedtime stories, she actually wants the characters to be involved. She makes me play the music in the car. She likes watching me play Persona 5, so she was very happy with that. And Mario Kart, I mean, anyone who has Mario Kart, you know what it's like. You get anybody in the family together, throw them a controller, and they're going to do their best, man. My wife even plays that one. Other games on here that I love, we got Disgaea 5, just a great turn-based strategy RPG, kind of in the same vein of Final Fantasy Tactics, but with much more humor and an anime style. Love this series, and the 5th one went on sale when I first got my Switch, so I had to pick it up. We got Octopath Traveler. This is just a love letter to classic RPGs from the SNES days, so I've been killing that. Diablo 3. What do I got to say about Diablo, man? You just hack and slash and get that loot, so those games are always fun. The first one is actually one of the first games I really played online. This is back in the dial-up days, and you go on battle.net, play in all kinds of different chat rooms. You talk to people on there, set up your game. I had this little thing called the trainer where you could just cheat like crazy back then. They didn't even have any sort of control over it, so that was kind of fun. You could make whatever gear you wanted, max your stats, kill people over and over, take all their money. I know it's kind of a dickish thing to do, but you know what? I was kind of doing my troll thing back in the days. I was only like maybe 14 or so when I was playing the first Diablo. Diablo 2 was pretty cool. Diablo 3, had a lot of fun with that. I'm pretty much done, although I must have put like 70, 80 hours or so on that. I'm also going to throw Hollow Knight on there. This is a Metroidvania style game that really just took me by surprise, man. It's one of those games I had heard people talking about a lot, and I'm like, there's no way this is going to live up to the expectations. But it actually did, man. I really enjoyed this game. Just the atmosphere, the music, the story, and the world actually has quite a bit of depth to it. So just the whole thing is fascinating. And lastly, I'm going to go with Dark Souls, man. I just beat it. And this is another game that I kind of chronicled on Twitter. You might have saw the thread that I started where I was actually disappointed with it at first because this shit is hard as hell, man. Like, when I first started this, it was so difficult just trying to get used to the clunky controls. Pretty much any bad guy, even just the regular ones, can kill you if they hit you 2 or 3 times. It's just a really tough game. It just has one of those really hard learning curves to it. So it took me a while to get into that. But once I got it figured out, got some good gear, some good skills and stuff like that, absolutely fell in love with it and I was addicted. But the thing I will say about Dark Souls, man, it really just heightens my anxiety. Like, I sometimes have anxiety and paranoia issues in general, like nothing over the top where I'm medicated or I need help, but, just like anyone else, you have a bad day, maybe you didn't get enough sleep, you feel a bit on edge. This game actually will push you over that damn edge, man. It has some pretty intense moments, but that's all part of the fun. It's almost like a horror game in that sense. It's not really a horror game, it's not like Resident Evil, or what's that one called? Dark Space or Deep Space? I forget what it's called. Someone can correct me. The one that's kind of like Resident Evil, but you're in space. It's just really scary. I think maybe it was Dead Space. It's not a traditional horror game, but Dark Souls certainly gives you some of those feels, some of those vibes, because it's very bleak, difficult, and it just puts you in these positions where you're actually kind of scared and anxious and worried. But you know what? These are some of the games I really enjoyed. And even, just to throw an extra one out there, I'll say Final Fantasy VII, because I'm actually replaying that right now. Having a lot of fun with it. And it's pretty cool how with this remake on the Switch, they let you cheat. Like if you're getting beat up in a fight and you want to just boost your limit break all the way and you want to get full HP, you can press a button, it'll do that for you. And I know, man, that's cheating. But sometimes you just want to play through a fucking game. It kind of reminds me of that article recently about Sekiro, that new game that came out, and someone cheated to beat it and they didn't feel bad, and then all the gamers were like, oh, you only cheated yourself, you didn't really enjoy the game and beat it, you blah, blah, blah. Like, who gives a fuck, man? Play your games however you want to play them, have fun with them. I came up on the Game Genie when you would put in codes to do the moon jump, to switch levels and do whatever the hell you wanted to do, so I understand. Sometimes you just want to do it that way. And in this sense, with Final Fantasy VII, just to bring it back to what I was initially talking about, sometimes you're just out leveling up, you know what I mean? And I know I could just go buy a bunch of potions or spam my cures and use a tent. Like, trust me, man, I've been playing RPGs forever. I know I could do that shit. But sometimes I just play. I'm like, you know what? My hit points are getting low. Let's boost it up. Let's just keep this shit going, man. Let me grind out these levels right quick. And carry on with the game. I don't really care if I'm cheating because I beat it before anyway. Makes it quicker, makes it easier to do what I got to do. There's also a speed up button. And that's one thing I will say about Final Fantasy VII, man, is as great as it was, as great as it still is, and it'll go down in history, man, is it ever clunky without that speed up button, man. Everything is so damn slow. It's hard to tell which way to go at times because just the art and some of the levels, you can't tell what you can walk on, what you can walk across, up, down. Do I go this way, that way? Slow, clunky controls. Of course, the graphics are kind of weird and blocky too, but anyway, I'm getting off track. We are going to continue here. So, we got a question from Divine Oblivion. They have a couple of questions, actually. And the first one is they wanted me to rank all 9 original Wu-Tang members. So this is tough to do because the thing with ranking any list, especially with a group list, there's so many different ways you can look at it. So I'm mostly going off, obviously, just my personal opinion as well as the bars and solo success. So I would say Ghostface would be at my number 1. I just think he's been the most consistent over the years. I'd put Raekwon right behind him because he's been pretty consistent, and he's also dropped some pretty amazing solo work, man. Only Built for Cuban Links 1 was dope, obviously. Even the second one was much better than I think people thought it would be because sequels usually aren't that great. He's got some great projects. Even The Wild was good. Then I would put Method Man. He's just versatile. He's involved in all kinds of shit. He was on The Wire. He did How High. Obviously, that doesn't have to do with music. But, Method Man, I think, has had a lot of commercial success in that sense. And he's really spread his wings and has done other things. So he also has some decent albums under his belt. His first one, I would say, is great. That Judgment Day one, I don't remember too much on that. It had a couple of tracks. I remember it being a bit fillerish, so I might have to revisit it. But he's always dope as a feature, too. He's one of those rappers that when you hear him, you know who he is, man. He's got that very smooth and buttery style. So after him, I'd put Jizza. He's just a master wordsmith who gave us Liquid Swords. Master Killa is, he's one who's kind of one of my favorites, to be honest. I think he might be a little bit underrated, but his solo albums have actually been pretty dope. I know he's got kind of a slow style, a little bit different what he does, but he always drops those wisdom gems, has some good beat selection as well. Then I would have Capadonna. I mean, man, he gave us The Pillage, and I think that is low-key one of the best Wu-Tang solo albums after the usual classics. I mean, you know the ones you're normally going to run down from some of the people I've already mentioned, in particular Ghostface and Raekwon. But still, man, I think The Pillage is really underrated. That's a great album. I love that one. Then I would have ODB. He had infinite personality, and he always tended to steal the show when he popped up, but unfortunately his life was cut short, so there's not too much work from him to go on when compared to some of the other guys, so that's kind of why I put him down here. No disrespect to ODB. Then we have RZA, and I know he's the mastermind, so he's got to get full credit for that. But bar-wise, I'm not a huge fan of RZA. Like, I'm not checking for RZA features and solo RZA albums as much as I am everybody else. And lastly, I would go with U-God, man. I always thought he was fine on group projects, and sometimes he'd show up and deliver some really dope verses, especially on the first Wu-Tang album. But, you know, his solo stuff never really did too much for me. He's not someone who I really checked for, like, oh, I got to hear this new U-God. Oh, my God, he dropped something new. So, you know, I'd put him at the end. But altogether, they're all legends, so I got love for them. The next question is, what's one thing you'd like to expand past your comfort zone to do? And that one is kind of, it's hard to answer because there's not really too much that I'm necessarily overly uncomfortable with. Just right now for the stage of my life that I'm at, you know, I'm getting older, man. I'm tired. I got these young kids, 3 kids under 4. It's just no joke, especially when one of them is a toddler who tears shit up all the time. The other is a 4-year-old who's just whiny, and that's a whole other thing you got to deal with, asking you all these questions. Then you have a baby, not even a year old yet. Like, all these things take up a lot of my time, and obviously I'm very happy with that. I'm not saying I would change anything. I certainly wouldn't. I love my family. But I'm just saying, for me, right now, like, I would love to do more reviews. I would love to even do the podcast more often, like once a week or something like that, really get into some deeper topics and have more guests and stuff. But for me, I just don't have the time. So that's kind of a sideways answer to your question. But really, that's just me speaking on the zone that I'm in right now and why I can't really do some more of the things that I want to, which, you know, kind of would be me stepping outside of my comfort zone. But it's hard enough doing what I'm doing now. But one day I want to do more. And the last one he had was Speaker Box or Love Below. And even though this is going to be a bit of a cop-out as I hit my table and shake everything, it all depends on my mood, to be honest with you. Obviously, Speaker Box is for when I'm feeling a bit more upbeat. Maybe I want some more, just some more upbeat stuff. When I'm feeling upbeat, I want upbeat stuff. Smart one, Lucas, but that's how it is. And Love Below for when I want some more vibey, sing-songy stuff. You know how 3 Stacks does. So there's my answers to his questions. Moving on, we have Torch, who asks, I know you're hardly a fan of this type of rap, but who are your favorite trap rappers, or at least close to being favorites? Now, off the rip, I thought Bankroll Fresh was really dope, man. Rest in peace to Bankroll Fresh. He had some songs and albums that I really appreciated. I love that song ESPN. That shit is crazy. And of course, we got the legends like T.I. and Jeezy. You know, their early projects really get a lot of love for me, especially Jeezy, man. I'm a big fan of some of those earlier tapes and albums, although lately, you know, hasn't really given me those same feelings. So it's not so much that I completely dislike trap music. I just think that a full project of that generic cliche trap sound and content gets boring very fast, man. On the other hand, though, you know, there are artists who bring trap elements into their music, but they mix it up enough to keep it fresh by just being good rappers and maybe doing some other styles and content as well. So guys like Maxo Cream, Freddie Gibbs, Denzel Curry, etc. You know, you hear some of those trap elements, some of those big beats, some of that dope boy content and shit. But, they really do some other styles. And like I said, I think they're pretty good rappers. So those are a couple artists that I would name. And the next question is kind of similar, coming to us from William C., who asked me, which artist do you think is great at autotune? Because, you know, I'm not that big on autotune. If you've been listening and watching my reviews for a while, you already know that. I don't automatically hate it every time that I hear it, but, you know, it just makes people sound very similar, in my opinion. It's kind of played out and watered down. But, you know, I would say Jay Huss. I like the way that he uses it because he has a bit of a different sound, not just with the way that he uses autotune, but even with his production styles, the way that he raps. I really liked his album Common Sense. And Jazz Cartier had a really nice mix on that Hotel Paranoia project. I know some people say that he's reminiscent of Travis Scott a little bit. Even I felt that way when I was first getting into this project. But that was a project that I really enjoyed, and there is quite a bit of auto-tune on that. So a little bit disappointing with Jazz's last project. Wasn't awful, but, you know, it did fit that generic mold, whereas Hotel Paranoia really had him sort of mixing it up and just putting a unique spin on what he was doing. So there's a couple answers for that. William also asked me, do you ever think Drake will stop doing long albums? And in this day and age where it's all about getting those streams, I doubt it, man. Not to mention that he's one of those artists who could very easily drop like 50 or 60 goddamn songs, and he's going to get paid. He's going to get those streams because people are going to check it anyway out of curiosity's sake. Like, what is Drake doing? Even Drake's biggest haters are going to listen to some of that shit, man. I know you probably don't believe me when I say that, but I honestly believe that. People love to check out things even if they don't like them. I mean, you've seen my rant reviews. You know how it goes. The curiosity is always going to get the best of them. Now, he follows this up with, who do you think is the biggest hip-hop artist in general? And just like the Wu-Tang question, this is tough to answer because there's so many different things you can look at. But my answer for this question, when we talk about impact, I gotta go with Tupac, man, because his influence can be heard in plenty of rappers even today, and his legacy is incredibly strong all this time after his death. Even people who aren't huge into hip-hop seem to have this sort of love and respect for Tupac. So I think he's had the most impact on the game. I know you could argue that. There's plenty of other artists out there who you might say, who are up there. Maybe some people have different personal favorites or whatever. But I think Tupac's certainly got to be in that conversation. So moving on to the next one, Jay Peaks asks me, this one's sort of one of those hypotheticals, would you rather listen to 4 Nav albums from start to finish or walk through the most dangerous neighborhood in the world with a pocket full of cash at night by yourself? And obviously, I got to make it home to my babies, man. So I got to go with those 4 Nav albums. And besides, man, I'm probably going to fall asleep like 3 songs into the first one. So it's all good. I'll just treat that shit like a lullaby, and everything's going to be good. I'd rather that than getting jacked up, maybe shot and stabbed somewhere. So fuck that. I'm not taking that chance. But right now, what I am going to take is a quick break, and then we'll get back and wrap up some more of these questions. So stay tuned.
What up, y'all? It's your boy P-Sake, MC out of Chicago by way of Cincinnati, Ohio. You're now listening to the Luke James podcast. Luke James, not the singer. Scorsese of this music review shit, I just fucked that up. It's all good. You can hit me up on Twitter. It's P-Sake Music, S-A-Y-K-E. You can find my music anywhere you find your music. Heaven Can Wait out now. Golden Rule coming soon. Gia, Luke James.
All right, we are back, and we're going to jump right into it with this question from Long John Bronze, who asked me if I have an all-time favorite concert memory, and it has definitely got to be when I went down to Rhode Island to see Wu-Tang. Got in a car with a bunch of my friends. It was a long drive from Nova Scotia, and we took a little detour through New Brunswick, but it was so worth it just to hear so many of the classics that I grew up listening to, man. Now, unfortunately, this was after ODB died and Rizzo was busy with something else. I think maybe he was doing a movie or maybe recording an album or something like that, but it was still just great. They still did all the songs, even without their parts, or they would just rap their parts. Everyone else was there. Just put on a great show, even though near the end they started to unravel a bit because they were drunk as hell. Ghostface, I remember, was slow dancing with some girl up there doing one of his songs and like slurring his words. Raekwon was trying to call girls on stage, but he was yelling about how he didn't want any fat bitches up there, so that was kind of rude and wild and disrespectful. But I mean, hey, it's a Wu-Tang show, man. Shit got out of hand. It was pretty crazy. And that was definitely a great time. I'd also shout out Master Ace, who came to Halifax. And that was fun because my friends and I actually got to host that because at the time we were doing a lot of stuff on the local scene, and that was fun. So Wu-Tang first, and then when Master Ace came here, that was great too. Now, Don Valdez, he asked me, what keeps you motivated every day? And even though it's a cliche answer, my general motivation comes from my family, man. Just trying to do the best for my wife and kids. And as far as the channel and podcast goes, obviously what keeps me motivated is you guys who actually listen and share, give positive feedback, and have discussions with me. Discussions, I kind of stuttered over that word. It's late at night, man. I'm starting to get kind of tired, but we're running down these questions. Now, Skev Beats, he's got a couple of questions. He also says, go Birds. So yes, of course, it's always go Birds. Just saw the schedule, and I think for the season coming up, the Birds should do good, man. I think the Eagles can do like maybe, let's say like 13-3. I'm going to go with, barring any injuries. We'll see what happens. But he asked me, you review a lot of rap and hip-hop, but would you be open to reviewing some more rock or maybe like a new Megadeth or Metallica album? And I've actually thought about doing this before just to mix things up. Got to shout out Mike Seatown because he does a great show called Out of My Element where people vote on projects for him to check out, and he just steps outside of his comfort zone to listen to projects. Great idea. Obviously, I would not jack that from my boy, but I would love to do something somewhat similar where, I am listening to stuff that I don't normally listen to and go into it with a positive approach. You know what I mean? Not just go into it and be like, I don't like this shit, it's whack. But just really try to get into some different stuff that is outside of my comfort zone. So, we'll see what happens with that. He also wonders if I've ever thought of moving to the USA, maybe Philadelphia or Boston. And to be honest, I feel pretty happy where I'm at here in East Coast Canada, man. All the wild shit I see going on in the US has me pretty much completely turned off from that idea of ever moving to the US. Not to say Canada is perfect, but I feel pretty good about how things are here, so I'm not in any rush to move to the United States. And he also asked me what inspires you to keep reviewing. Family life, marriage, and a job can be a burden, and how do you manage? You know, like being a sports fan, a gamer, a dad, a music fan, and all these things. How do I do it all? And it's really hard. Like I said, my inspiration obviously is the people who support what I do. In general, you know, like I said, there's times where I do certainly feel anxious and just overworked and tired because it is hard to balance all these things. But at the end of the day, I've just learned to do it. You know, you take your time where you get it. That's why I'm doing this podcast late at night. I'll probably do a bit of editing tomorrow when the baby goes down for a nap. You just got to juggle things, and you got to pick and choose and be fair to your family, because I can't just leave my wife hanging with these 3 kids all the time while I'm down here doing shit. That's not how it works. Once they get older, as I said, I will have a bit more time, and I look forward to that. But for now, I'm enjoying these young years, and I just get my time in when I can. So it's certainly stressful, but hey, I keep going. He also asks, how long do you think you will do the podcast? Are short-term reviews or long-term podcasting, like which one of these is your focus, basically, is what he's asking. And I actually really love doing both. I think the album reviews will always be the main focus for videos and for the YouTube channel, but I think the podcast really presents a great format just to get into deeper topics and to do shows like this one right here. I mean, hypothetically, if I could pick one or the other just to do as a legit career, I think podcasting would be great if I had all the time. Like, if that was my main job and I could set up with cameras and have guests and just do interviews and do my reviews through the podcast and all that, I think that would be amazing. Like, if I won the lottery and I could just do whatever I want to do with my money, quit my job and shit, that's what I would do, man. I'd build myself a nice little studio and really try to go hard with some podcasting, just because you can still do the reviews through that. And if you wanted, you could even separate the reviews from the podcast into videos. I mean, there's a lot of different options, but for now, as I said, based on my time restraints and what I can do, the reviews are the main focus. That's what people know me for. That's what the YouTube channel has always been. But I really do have a lot of fun podcasting, so it would be cool to take that to the next level, but we'll see what happens. Now, Dr. Gordon Freeman has an interesting question for me because he's asking what my thoughts are on cancel culture. Do you agree that people are inconsistent with who should and shouldn't be canceled? And, you know, first of all, as cheesy as it sounds, I always think it's good when we can progress and learn from each other and just be more open about things. You know what I mean? I think when people get called out, sometimes it is important to have certain discussions so that we're not all just being assholes to people, inciting hate, inciting violence, all that shit. That obviously is not good. But I do think that sometimes the cancel culture gets taken too far when people are getting called out for things that maybe aren't as serious as people make them out to be, because, you know, sometimes people try to take anything that people say or do and make it into this huge situation. It's not always a big deal. Not everything has to be a big deal, despite what social media has taught us. So sometimes it goes too far, and I do think that people are inconsistent, because if someone's favorite says something, they're going to be more likely to accept it. Maybe they have a bit more context to this person and what they're saying, where they're coming from. They might find some way to make it all right. Whereas if another person who they hated said the same thing, they're not fucking with it at all. So I think people are very inconsistent. I think the important thing is really to have discussions around what the real issue is, rather than just focusing on canceling people and taking them out of here. Although sometimes when some people are canceled, I ain't that upset. Like, if you are someone who has been doing shit for a long time, I'm not going to throw out any names just to stir shit up, but if you have a track record of constantly doing stuff, I don't feel bad for you when people kind of come for your neck, because if you're not making an honest mistake and learning from it and trying to do better, if you're just a dickhead who's always trying to stir shit up, then I think you kind of get what's coming for you. I will actually throw someone out there. You know that girl who's always posting with the gun and just always saying dumb shit? I don't even know what her name is, but fuck her name anyway. She doesn't deserve to have it said. That's an example of someone who is always trying to play the victim, and they're always just saying some ignorant, dumb shit, trying to rile people up and be an asshole. People like that, I have no need for, man. I hope people, you know, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt, to the point that if you show that you're trying to make things better, you've maybe learned and have grown from whatever it is you said. I also think it's kind of corny when people dig into someone's past and bring shit up, because people do grow and change. But if they are still being the same asshole today, like all these years later, then fuck them, because as I said, they haven't changed. They're not making an effort. But to me, that's what it's about. It's about sincerity, because everyone fucks up. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody maybe says or does some things that maybe at the time it wasn't as bad. Like, anyone who was on Twitter years ago, you know what it was like on Twitter. People were wilding the hell out, saying whatever they wanted and joking about things, and most people just knew it was a joke. Like, the shit wasn't taken that serious, but now people dig up these tweets, that context is gone. It's like, oh my god, this person made a joke about this, they made a joke about that. And that's the other thing. It's the context. Are people trying to be funny? Are they trying to be hateful? It's just, I could do a whole show on this because not everybody's offended by the same shit. There's some shit that this person over here might be offended by and think this person needs to be canceled because of this joke they told or what they said. And I might just be like, maybe, it is a bit over the line, but it's a stand-up comedian telling a joke. Like, do we really got to go that far? I don't know. It's a whole other topic. But my main point as I ramble and rant about this, hopefully it's worth a damn. I don't know if it is or not because I'm just going off top. But my main point is I want to see people show that they are making an effort to learn and grow when they fuck up. Cancel culture seems to be more about people just going, I'm a better person. Let's get this person out of here. I've never made a mistake. Sometimes it seems like it's not even about the actual issue. It's just about people throwing a fit. So there you go. There's my fucking rant all over the place on cancel culture. I can go deeper in that if someone's maybe misunderstanding what I'm saying or if you want more detail. So, feel free to ask. Now we have Sanic, who asked me, what are your top 5 games of all time? And this is one of those questions that's really loaded to me. Like, anytime someone asks me to run down a list of top 5 or top 10, it's hard, man, because I'm getting old, goddammit. Like, I'm going to be 35 coming up. I've lived a lot of life. I played a lot of games. I've listened to a ton of music. So trying to narrow anything down to a top 5 is really hard. But I'm going to throw out some games I love anyway. So Persona 5 and Final Fantasy 6. Those two are pretty much tied for my number 1 spot right now. Final Fantasy VI was a reigning champion forever, but then Persona 5 blew my mind. Hopefully we're getting that on Switch, we'll see. And to throw in some more recent answers, I'll bring up some of the games that I mentioned earlier, like Dark Souls, as well as Hollow Knight. Then you got other classics like Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana, Shining Force 2, Mysteria on Sega Saturn, that is a hidden gem, Rune Factory 4, the Monster Hunter games. I could go on and on, but basically I'm just all about the RPGs, man. Although I did have a lot of fun with fighters back in the day. Not so much now because it's usually just me here. My kids and my wife, they're not really big into fighting games. But back when I used to live in a party shack in particular, man, every night different people were showing up. We'd be drinking, smoking, partying, having a good time. We'd be playing like Soul Calibur, maybe firing up some Street Fighter or Tekken or some shit. So, there's so many games that I enjoy, but mostly I'm an RPG guy. Now we have an interesting question from Connor. How many duds can a legendary rapper drop before their legendary status is revoked in your opinion? And to be honest with you, I feel like once you attain that legendary status, it is always going to be there in one form or the other. For example, as bad and inconsistent as Eminem has been over the years, I came up when he was in his prime and really shaking shit up. So regardless of how hard I've been on some of his music over the past X amount of years, I think he's always going to go down in hip-hop as a legend just because of the impact he had. Those first couple of albums were great. He really did have a huge impact on the game. But once we get into discussions about discographies and stuff, I don't think his discography is that strong. So that's another topic, What are some of your best discographies? His wouldn't be high up on my list because there's other rappers that I would prefer. But when we're talking about that legendary status, I think we're talking about a collection of things, man. This is an instance where I think sales would come into play. Obviously, if you're a legendary rapper, some of your albums, in order to be legendary, would have had to have been very popular. Not to say sales and streams are what matter. We know that it's about quality, but you get what I'm saying, goddammit. If your shit is truly popular and poppin', you look at some guys who have dropped great records, whether you want to talk about Eminem again or DMX, Jay-Z. Like the word legend, my point is that it's so loaded. Like, I'm sure everybody can look at legendary in a different way, but to me, I don't think it always has to be built on consistency. When we're talking about top discographies and top rapper list period, yes, I would think about consistency, but legendary to me is your impact on the game and what you've done, like DMX. There's another rapper who really hasn't been doing too much lately at all. His first couple of albums were great, then things tapered off, but he's still a legend for me. I just remember when he came out, how much he shook shit up. The Dog was really dope. Jay-Z's a legend. Nas is a legend. Biggie, Pac, there's so many people. Scarface. So I don't know. I don't know if the legendary status really goes away, to be honest. I don't think you could have just one amazing album and disappear. Like, you got to have a bit more work than that. But, I think you get my point. I think that legendary status, for the most part, can't really be revoked. Damn Fool, do you plan to change up the way you review bad/very generic albums? And not really, man. I kind of like the rant format because with some of these albums, there's not a lot to be said, especially content-wise. So I'd rather listen through, take a couple light notes, and then just kind of rant on it and see where it goes. That's what makes it a rant review to me. I think there have been maybe one or two rant reviews where it wasn't super negative, like it might have been like a 2.5 or something, but ranting is really when I just take some bare notes and I'm like, I don't got a whole lot to say. Let me just wing and freestyle a lot of the shit. But I still listened and took notes, so it's not like I'm half-assing it. It's just, a little more free form than a project that has more content to break down and more to it. So I don't really see that changing. We're getting down to the bottom here. Just Timmy, are there any albums that are classics solely because of their impact on you and or how much you like them? And just like legendary, I think the word classic is kind of loaded, especially in this day and age where, everything is either classic or trash. Like there's no gray area. But, in this instance, there are certainly albums that remind me of a specific time in my life. So while I might not argue them, like if I was sitting down with a bunch of people, let's make the top 10 list of classics. Like classics people cannot deny. Some of these albums wouldn't make that, and I probably wouldn't even bring them up because that's a whole different thing you'd be doing. But if we're talking about albums that just I love, maybe personal classics you might call them, I mean, I could throw Devin the Dude's Just Trying to Live out there. Actually, I could argue that that is a classic, to be honest with you, period. Regardless of, just being based on my personal opinion. I love that. But that's one that I'll use because that's one that doesn't get talked about too much. Not everybody is huge into Devin the Dude. He's not really a mainstream artist. But Just Trying to Live is an incredible album to me. It reminds me of just being young and carefree in my high school days when I was just smoking weed, chilling, laid back, listening to that. Dragon's Opposite of H2O, that's another one that's not even really an amazing album, but I just remember when that came out, me and my boys listened to it a lot. Basically, I'm just looking at albums that remind me of those simpler times, just the high school days, man. They're not necessarily albums that I would say are pure classics, like put these on the list right now. These are the best albums of all time. But you know what? They mean a lot to me. They remind me of a time in my life, so that's why they count. Now, Young Mofongo and Rico Reeds had pretty much the same question, basically, and it was about if I have a hip-hop guilty pleasure, like an album or rapper you enjoy, even though they're whack. And whenever I'm asked this, I go to No Limit Records and Cash Money Records, because back in the day, man, a lot of people around where I was really weren't fucking with them at all, thought they were cheesy, thought they were corny. To this day, you mention those labels and some of the artists, and people just shun them like they were garbage, but I liked a lot of those artists, man. There were a lot of good albums that came out on No Limit and Cash Money. I mean, obviously, you got some legendary albums on there. You want to talk about like 400 Degrees, some of those early Master P albums I love, The Ice Cream Man. But I guess my ultimate answer here would be like Silk the Shocker. Would I argue with someone and try to make it sound like he's a good rapper? No. Everyone knows his flow is fucked up and he's offbeat and crazy, but goddamn it, I cannot lie. Some of the songs on his albums back in the day had that great production from Beats by the Pound. You had plenty of great features on there, so, there were some tracks on there that I liked from him, man. Even that first album, The Shocker, is a personal favorite of mine. His flow wasn't quite as crazy then. He was doing that kind of Bay Area sound, because I believe at the time No Limit was coming out of California. So yeah, man, I think everyone's got guilty pleasures. Sometimes you like artists or songs that you wouldn't argue for and stand up like, no, man, that shit, how could you say that? But you like it, and it's good. So if it's good, it's good. That's what matters. But, I think that's an interesting question. That's certainly something that's interesting to think about. We got two more questions. Nostradamus, favorite horror directors, and there are so many legends, but I just made a quick list to show love to David Cronenberg, George A. Romero, Wes Craven, John Carpenter, mostly the legends who I can remember watching their stuff as someone who was born in the 80s and really coming up in the 90s getting into horror. You know what I mean? They gave us all kinds of iconic moments, iconic characters, movies, scenes. So those would be some of my favorite directors. I'm sure I left someone out, but, there's a lot out there. And the last one from Dr. Octoputa. Who is the corniest rapper right now? It is hard as hell, I think, to single just one person out, but I want to use this opportunity to point to those FB caption rappers, man. I'm talking about the Facebook caption rappers, those ones where you're scrolling around, you see it sponsored, and at the top there's a headline or like a header, and it says, "You won't believe what this white girl says," or "This white boy destroys racism in 5 seconds." It always just says some outlandish claim at the top or bottom. And then you listen, and it's just like a stale, generic beat with some 808s. They're rapping fast, but they have no interesting soul or style. The shit just feels absolutely forced, contrived, and it just manufactured, not interesting, man. That shit is just awful to me, and probably the corniest shit in the game. Not to say they're all bad. I'm sure there are some rappers I like who just happen to use that That's the way that they put their music out. Maybe they put a video on Facebook and they have a caption, but I'm talking about the specific ones, man. I'm sure there's some good rappers doing it, but I'm talking about the ones who are fucking corny. You guys know what I mean. Boom. There we go. Whew, man. Out of breath at times and spots here, but that's how it goes when you're talking straight for damn near 40 minutes. Hopefully you appreciate these answers, because I damn sure appreciate the questions. Thanks for helping out. I kind of like doing these. If you guys enjoy these, I might do more of them just because it's a good way to do a podcast. It's quick. You guys send the questions, I come up with the answers. I don't always got to dig up for topics, but I am still working on ranking Jay-Z's albums for a podcast that should be coming up sometime, hopefully soon, man. But his discography, I think it's like 12, 13 albums that I'm doing. I'm just doing the solo stuff, so there's not going to be Watch the Throne or like mixtapes or EPs or any weird shit like that, although I am including the Dynasty, because that was actually a solo... that was supposed to be a compilation, but then they put it out like as a solo Jay-Z album, even though everybody's all over it. But yeah, I'm working on that. It's just going to take some time because it's a lot of music to listen through. And I'm basically doing like a mini review for every album. So that might be a long podcast. I'm going to have to shorten that script up. We'll see how it goes. But that's going to be a lot of fun. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. The last podcast, I raked Drake's album, so check that out. Did I say rake or rank, man? I'm getting tired, man. I'm like falling asleep. But I ranked Drake's albums. Also ranked Kanye's albums. I'm going to make a playlist on YouTube of album rankings so you guys can find them. Because this is something I'm going to do with the podcast, man. I really like ranking discographies and going back. I think it's fun to do. And the podcast format works great for that. So anyway, we are out of here. Thank you once again for listening. If you like it, make sure you subscribe. Share it around. It's on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. Do all the good things that I usually get you guys to do. Show me love and show me lots of it. And I won't see you next time. But you guys are going to hear me because it's a podcast, not a video. It's kind of corny to say that, but I like it. I don't know. It just rolls right off the tongue at the end of my podcast. So there it is. Boom, we're wrapping it up. Peace.